Abortion has become a really contested issue, but especially for Africa. I don't mean for the Africans. I mean abortion has become a real issue for Africa on the international stage. You see, I have been to many international events and international conferences. I've been to events at the United Nations. And the normal narrative and the usual narrative is that because many of the African countries do not have legal abortion, that indeed African nations have to start doing something in order to get abortion legalized so that women can stay safe. This is the usual narrative. So I decided to make a trip to Africa and speak to women in Africa about this particular issue as it pertains to Africa. Abortion has become a really contested issue, especially for Africa. And I do not mean for Africans. I mean abortion has become a really heated issue for Africa while on the international stage. You see, I have been to many international conferences. I've been for events at the United Nations. And the usual narrative is that because most of the African countries do not have legal abortion, that African nations have to start doing something in order to get abortion more legal and accessible to women so that they can stay safe and so that they can stop dying. This was why I decided to speak to women in different parts of Africa to know exactly how the abortion issue affects them. I decided that I should find out exactly how they have experienced abortion and how they feel about abortion, whether it's being legal or not is something that they find important, or whether this is an issue really for them. Marie Stopes International is one of the largest abortion-providing organizations in the English-speaking world. They are indeed an abortion giant who claim to provide more than 3 million abortions and abortion-related services in all their work around the different countries where they exist. Now, it is therefore so very important to get to speak to not just women who have been affected by the works of Marie Stopes, the abortion services that Marie Stopes is giving out in different parts of the world, but also it is important to listen to the voice of someone who has worked for Marie Stopes International. So it is such a privilege and pleasure for me to be sitting here with a young Kenyan woman called Jackie. Jackie worked for Marie Stopes for a number of years, and she would tell us about that. But Jackie has very much an insider's perspective as to what Marie Stopes does, at least here in Kenya, how Marie Stopes is carrying out their work in Kenya, the sort of work they do. But Jackie's voice is the most important one that should be heard in Kenya, but also in different countries beyond Kenya, to know exactly what happens behind the closed doors of Marie Stopes International. So very grateful to you, Jackie, for making out time to sit with me and speak with me about this very important issue. Now, Jackie, I'd like to start right at the very beginning. Of course, by repeating that you worked for Marie Stopes International here in Kenya. So can you tell me from the get-go, how many years did you work for Marie Stopes, and around what time, from what year to what year did you work for them?
Thank you for having me. I worked for Marie Stopes for 8 years. I joined them end of 2004. And I left them because I myself went through abortions during that period.
So you worked for Marie Stopes for 8 years. And can you tell me exactly what you were doing for Marie Stopes during this time? What was your duty or your job at Marie Stopes International?
Okay, so when I joined Marie Stopes Kenya, I joined them through one of their projects that they had, and I joined as a project admin assistant, and I worked for 2 projects. One of them was Raha Condoms, they were distributing condoms in Kenya, and the other one was called Amua. And this project they incorporated, and they trained private clinics, private practitioners on some of the services that Maristops does, and they rebranded them, and they gave them equipments at half price.
Right, so they gave them equipment and kind of took them on as franchise in a way, right? Yes. So if you're talking about branding, that's they become a franchise sort of Maristops, and you call this the Amua project? Right, so they gave them equipment and kind of took them on as franchise in a way,
yes,
right?
yes,
so
yes.
If you're talking about branding, that's they become a franchise sort of Maristops, and you call this the Amua project?
Yes, it was called, the clinics are called Amua clinics, and they are all over Kenya.
And they're all over Kenya now?
Yes.
And they're all over Kenya now. And this was part of what you were doing. You did work for this project?
Yes. Like for the Amua projects, we went around, especially the western side of Kenya, where we recruited the private practitioners, and we took them through training and gave them equipment. So that was part of my job, and to go around with the staff.
So were these clinics, you know, providing basic services, basic healthcare services, prenatal or postnatal services, or what sort of services were they providing, and what sort of services was Maristops then training them to become?
Most of these clinics were just doing basic services, but so what Maristops was doing was like training them to do more services, especially what Maristop does. So they will go through the trainings like insertion and removal of contraceptives, and most of them also did the abortion trainings.
So these were clinics that were not doing abortions before, but then Maristops partnered with them and made them into abortion clinics. Is that what you're saying?
Yes. Yes, Maristops was training them to do the early pregnancy abortions. But when the pregnancies were bigger, they will direct them now to and refer them to Maristops clinics.
So Maristops has done this with many clinics, many Amua clinics.
When I was there, they did most of them in Western and Nyanza, but right now they've gone round. They're now in Nairobi, and the different countries around Nairobi. Right. Until this year, they're just increasing more and more.
How many would you estimate, how many Amua clinics who are now really abortion clinics that were created in a way or upgraded by Maristops, how many of these do you think you have around Kenya, or did you even have at the time when you were working for them?
Wow, the Amua clinics right now are so many, because their target is to get Amua clinics in every county in Kenya. So probably they could be getting to 100 clinics.
Wow. Wow, so Maristops indeed is establishing abortion facilities all over Kenya.
Yes, we do.
Right. So I would go back to when you were working there. You did these two projects, you said, but you also told me when we had an informal chat that you were doing some telephone work. So can you tell me a bit about your duties within Maristops, sitting by the telephone? What were you doing for them?
So yes, later, when I was in the project, years later, I got promoted to the admin assistant in now the Maristops organization and out of the project. So one of my responsibilities was a toll-free line, and this I carried everywhere, even at home, where women will call inquiring about abortions, and my work was to refer them to doctors nearby where they are.
And these doctors nearby, what would the doctors then do when you refer women to the doctors? How does it end normally would it be the doctors getting the women for for clinical checks, or would they prescribe things over the phone?
Okay, when I received a call from the toll-free line, my work was to find out how far the pregnancy was and how much the client has.
How much, as in money?
How much, yes, how much money they had, and where the client was. So from my list of clinics, I will send them to the nearest clinic, but also a clinic that could do the abortion depending on how much the lady had.
And how much was Marie Stopes charging for abortions when you were working with them, as far as you knew?
There was a specific, There was a specific charge for abortions depending on the pregnancy, but we talked to the ladies, so we could do an abortion depending on what they had. Then again, it also depends with the money that she has. Then it also they will choose which type of abortion to do for the lady.
And what sort of money are we talking about here? What amounts of money?
Basically, the amount started from 5,000 shillings going up.
5,000 shillings would be $50.
Yes.
Going all the way up to?
Depending on also because some of the ladies, they want to feel the pain, so they will get injections. So that will be more expensive. So it could go higher than even 20,000 shillings.
So in other words, Marie Stopes was offering, as far as you knew when you were there, Marie Stopes was offering women like more services with the amount of money they had. It's not that every woman was equal, in the sense that they were giving exactly the same thing to everybody. They were offering women services according to what the women had available to them.
Most of the clinics were positioned in different places, targeting different categories of women. So there will be a clinic in the CBD targeting the higher class ladies, and there are also clinics that are in the slum targeting the lower income ladies.
Okay, now you've talked a lot about abortion. So I would imagine that even when you were working for Marie Stopes, you were aware of the legal framework in Kenya concerning abortion. So what is the law about abortion here in Kenya? And I believe if it was the same or not, but what is the law on abortion in Kenya?
Abortion in Kenya is illegal, but Marie Stopes do abortions every day, even with that law in place.
So how can they, or how were they managing to perform abortions in contravention of the law? How were they circumventing the Kenyan law or the Kenyan legal system in order for them to provide these illegal abortions?
Marie Stopes does abortions, but when they are reporting, they report that it is post-abortion care.
So you say Marie Stopes is performing abortions even though abortion is illegal in Kenya. So that means, in a sense of speaking, that Marie Stopes is in Kenya performing illegal abortions. Now, if they say, or if they claim that it's just a few cases here and there where they're trying to help women or where they're trying to provide abortions, you know, in exceptional cases, what would you say to that? So in other words, what are the sort of numbers of abortions that were being provided, as far as you knew when you were working for Marie Stopes, in Nairobi and outside Nairobi and around Kenya by Marie Stopes International, or even by the services that they train? These are more clinics that they train to perform abortions.
Different clinics, depending on where they are, they had different targets. So I can say a clinic per day could even do 20 abortions in a day.
In one clinic?
Yes.
And how many clinics are in Kenya?
In one clinic?
Yes.
And how many clinics are in Kenya?
In Kenya, by the time I was leaving, there were 25 clinics.
So by the time you left Marie Stopes International, they were doing about 20 abortions approximated per clinic, and there were about 25 clinics that were just Marie Stopes in different parts of Kenya. So in other words, what you're telling me is that Marie Stopes was providing about 500 abortions every day in Kenya, and maybe about 180,000 abortions a year in Kenya where abortion is not legal?
Yes, and even more.
And even more, how so?
Yes, and even more.
And even more, how so?
How so? Because during the holidays, especially because of the young people, there was a rise of abortions, the different parties. So we got a lot of young youths from colleges, from the university, from primary schools.
You said primary school?
Yes, we got many cases of young girls who are still primary school, around 15, 14 years, who are taken to Marie Stopes by their parents.
To get these abortions, my goodness.
You said primary school?
Yes, we got many cases of young girls who are still primary school, around 15, 14 years, who are taken to Marie Stopes by their parents.
To get these abortions, my goodness.
So, who was performing these abortions in Marie Stopes?
Abortions in Marie Stopes are mainly done by nurses, clinical officers, and doctors. But the doctors, you'll get them mostly in the bigger clinics where there are maternity homes.
So where you have underserved areas and the slums, Marie Stopes would put non-clinical staff and medical assistants.
So where you have underserved areas and the slums, Marie Stopes would put non-clinical staff and medical assistants?
Yes, clinical officers and nurses.
Let me go into something else, which is even more more specific with regards to the experience, the unique experience you have working for Marie Stopes, or you had working for Marie Stopes. When you worked in Marie Stopes, how was the staff morale? Because what you've just described now is, what I've heard is a lot of abortions, 180,000 abortions a year, and these are illegal abortions mostly. And you've talked about even girls who are as young, so young that maybe their parents have had to bring them in for abortions. So this could not have been good for staff morale. So can you speak a bit about the staff that you knew working there? You were one of them, but what was life like working for Marie Stopes International?
I can answer that from my perspective and the people who are around me. It was tough, but most of us didn't relate that to their abortions. So we partied a lot, we drank a lot, and the promiscuity just between staff was very high.
Wow. So did you know people who wanted to leave Marie Stopes or couldn't, or, were there people who were unhappy at the time working for Marie Stopes?
Yes, during my time there were so many that resigned from Marie Stopes because of what was happening. And some of them will just leave and just wouldn't even come back for their pay. And when I talked to some of them, especially after I left, they told me it just got to them that they were doing something very bad and they could not just continue with their lives working there.
Right, and you talked about even, alcoholism and even promiscuity within the staffing environment or the working environment at Marie Stopes. Can you tell me of some of your own experience? Because there was something that you had mentioned to me when we had an informal chat about your own personal experience of this.
Okay, so when I joined Marie Stopes, I just had my first abortion. And this abortion I did when I was 5 months pregnant. And immediately, 2 months, I got the job in Marie Stopes. And during the interview, I was asked, what I felt about abortion, because that time I was in denial, and I thought I had sorted an issue. I was okay with abortion, and it was, for me then, it was a lady's choice. So I worked with them, and months later, I also got pregnant again. And in my 8 years there, I did 4 abortions in 4 different clinics in Maristopes. So it really was hard for me, having done the abortions. Now I could understand what the ladies were going through, the ladies that I was taking to, for abortions, what they were going through. And I had to seek help from somewhere. And it even got worse when I started my counseling and meeting ladies who had done abortions in Maristopes, and just hearing from them what they were going through, what the doctors had done to them for not telling them the truth, the pain that they felt when they were doing the abortions. So it was really heavy on my heart, and I drank a lot, and even with my 5 abortions, I had kept 1 child. And it was very hard for me relating to that child because of my drinking, because of just the pain of what I had done, of killing my 5 babies. I could not relate to my child. Most of the time, I would love her so much, and if anyone hurt them, I would get very angry. But again, most of the time I would like, I didn't understand why I kept her. Why was she special that I removed the other 5 and kept her? So she really had a tough time with me in her early years, and that really broke my heart. I would go out drinking and go back home in the wee hours of the morning, and I can say the lady that I had employed to look after her did a lot of mothering for her.
Right, right. Because you couldn't at the time, you were not in a state of mind to do that.
No, I could not. Yes.
Because you couldn't at the time, you were not in a state of mind to do that.
No, I could not do it. And also, I spent more time at work, if not in drinking. I spent more, I wanted to forget about what I had done, but also I'll be in the office until even 9 p.m. Yes, just trying to do something good and maybe just get more money. Yes. Yes.
Right. Now that you speak of money, would you say that Maristopes pays well their staff? Does Maristopes pay their staff well, or how did you experience that?
Okay, for me it was different because apart from the salary that I got, I also got a cut from every lady that I referred to a doctor.
For abortion?
Yes. That I referred to a doctor.
For abortion?
Yes. Yes, I got a cut from each referral. And so for me, I got a lot of money. But like for other people, because of what they were doing, the nature of work they were doing, no, I cannot say they were getting equivalent to what was being paid. Yeah.
Right. So, but in other words, what you're saying is that Maristopes does give bonuses if you are bringing in abortions to them.
Yes, yes. And people had targets. And when you surpassed your target, you got a bonus. The clinics had targets for abortions, and when they surpassed their targets, they will get bonuses, and which was shared among all the members of the clinic.
Wow, so from what you've said now, it sounds as if Maristopes gives bonuses for more abortions or to people who bring in more abortions?
Yes, clinics got bonuses if they surpassed their targets. And so that made people work to get more clients. And I, having done abortions there and having worked there, I can tell you for sure there was no much counseling for the lady not to do abortions. You just entered a clinic, you said you are pregnant, they just take you to they'll do some tests to maybe just know how far the pregnancy is, and then you just go to the theater. But there was no counseling to try and let the lady keep the baby. There was no counseling so that the woman will not do abortion, because for them it was about more abortions, getting to the target and getting a bonus.
So going back again to the staffing situation, I have heard something from people who have taken jobs from Marie Stopes to be drivers. You know, actually a number of people who have told me that they have had jobs from Marie Stopes to become drivers. Can you tell us what is the job of a driver at Marie Stopes?
A driver in Marie Stopes is just not a driver just driving buses around or taking a client to hospital. Drivers were also trained to sterilize equipments and to also transport the fetuses to one particular area where there is an incinerator where the babies were burnt.
So drivers were more like transporters for fetal remains and baby body parts.
Yes.
So again, this just shows the level of desecration that Marie Stopes International is doing here in Kenya. So speak a little bit, if possible, about how they disposed of the baby's remains. Whether it was in one place or whether there were different places, depends on the clinic. What was actually the plan for Marie Stopes to dispose of all the babies that they are having to abort illegally in this country?
So a town like Nairobi has about 6 clinics, but one of them is a maternity home which has an incinerator. But the other 5 are just small clinics, and in a town, in a informal settlement like the slums. So it was not easy for them to dispose around there. So the work of the driver at the end of the day was to pick the fetuses and to take them to the major nursing home where the incinerator was.
Right, thank you. Wow, thank you so much for at least drawing the curtain for those of us who don't know what actually happens behind the closed doors of Marie Stopes, for us to know some of the things that happen there, especially from the perspective of someone who has worked for them. But one thing I would like to find out has to do with patient care. So what we see mostly in Marie Stopes reports and in different places when you read the end-of-year reports, the financial reports, is that they're providing all this post-abortion care, maybe women who have gone to have backstreet abortions, and perhaps they come into Marie Stopes with incompleted abortions, and then Marie Stopes is then performing these life-saving procedures that they call post-abortion care. Can you tell me a little bit if Marie Stopes indeed provided post-abortion care while you were there? And if so, what type of post-abortion care did they provide?
Okay, in Marie Stopes Kenya, when I was working with them, yes, we got cases of people coming from the backstreet abortions, but Marie Stopes Kenya really weren't fast in taking such clients because they didn't want a case where the client will may probably die, and it will look like they had done the abortion. So most of them were turned away. Marriage Stops Kenya got clients from the backstreet abortions with perforated uteruses and other serious cases, but they turned them away because they didn't want a case where a lady will die and a case will be lodged against Marriage Stops Kenya for doing the abortions. And again, most of the ones who were coming from the slums didn't have enough money, and that's why they went to the slums. So first for them was money, and if you can't afford, you're taken out.
So, in other words, Marriage Stops in Kenya, at least as far as you knew when you were working there, rejected or turned away most post-abortion care cases that they would have had.
Yes, because most of them came from the slums, and these people didn't have money. The slums, and these people
and they don't have money. Wow. So also in Marriage Stops themselves being abortion providers, from what you have said here, were there ever cases where there were problems in the process of performing abortions? And if so, what were they?
Yes, we got, when I was there, there were cases where there are others who could get the perforated uteruses. There are some that abortions were done for underage ladies, girls who didn't have consent from their parents. So parents came later to complain in the clinics that this was done against their instructions. And there were few cases where we got cases that ladies died because of abortions done by Marriage Stops.
Wow. With all these things that you've described now, all horrific, the great numbers of abortions Marriage Stops is doing in this country, the way the staff is being treated, and the kind of devastation that comes to the staff as well in their personal lives as well as in their professional lives. Who are the international donors that you knew of at the time who were supporting the work of Marriage Stops and who were bringing in funding for them to continue their work in Kenya?
While I was working at Marriage Stops Kenya, the donors were DFID.
The Department for International Development.
Yes, there was the KfW.
Which is the German bank, which is basically the German government.
Yes, there was GTZ.
The Department for International Development.
Yes, there was the KfW.
Which is the German bank, which is basically the German government.
Yes, there was USAID.
The United States Agency for International Development.
Yes, there was Bill and Melinda Gates.
Wow, the Gates Foundation.
Yes.
They were funding.
Wow, the Gates Foundation.
Yes, and there's the European Union.
The European Union. So these were at least some of the major donors who were sustaining the work of Marriage Stops as far as you knew.
Sustaining the work of Marriage Stops as far as you knew.
Yes.
Now, what do you think because Marriage Stops gets a lot of these big donors who are very wealthy and who are able to give large sums of money for the continuation of their works in Kenya, but also in different parts of Africa. And they claim that they are an organization that is really necessary in Africa. They claim that in different parts of Africa where they exist, if they are not getting these kinds of big fundings, that women will die or people will be badly affected. In fact, recently there was the whole Mexico City policy debacle where Marriage Stops was defunded by the United States government. This is quite recent. And they have said for the record that as a direct result of them being defunded by the United States government, that women are going to die. So do you think, even being someone that worked in Marie Stopes, do you think that Marie Stopes is an organization which is necessary or needed by women of Kenya?
My take, we don't need Marie Stopes, because what Marie Stopes has done has hurt so many women, men, and families from abortion, from contraceptives, and all the other services that they do. We have other people that can do them, and even better. So no, we don't need Marie Stopes. We don't need Marie Stopes. For example, for me that worked with them, I got a pill from Marie Stopes, and that was my last abortion. And when I took it, it backfired on me, and it was a very, very painful experience for me. I almost died. I almost lost my uterus just because the drug didn't work how it was supposed to be.
Can you then tell me how you went from there, being a Marie Stopes staff, and not only a Marie Stopes staff, but also a Marie Stopes client? You had used the abortion services 4 times. How you went from there to where you are today, where you're saying we don't need Marie Stopes, where you're saying, you know, Marie Stopes is not a necessary organization, other people can provide the, you know, much better care. How have you made this transition?
It was 8 years in Marie Stopes, but it was painful years for me, especially because of my abortions. I had a post-abortive syndrome, and I worked like a zombie. I just went to work just for the money, but I was not happy. One day I got a call from a client, and just talking to her, asking her questions, I realized it was someone who was very special to me. She didn't know it was me who was on the other line. And that really hit me hard, that I was destroying other girls, other ladies. I was destroying families. And that really got to me. And by this time, I had started a support group, counseling, at another organization, because I could not get help from Marie Stopes. So I sought help from outside. And this drove me to leave Marie Stopes.
So you got good help from an organization that was doing post-abortion counseling for women outside of Marie Stopes?
Yes.
And this organization gave you the lifeline to leave Marie Stopes?
When I sought help from an organization in Kenya that helps women deal with post-abortion syndrome, I sat with a group of ladies who had done abortions in Marie Stopes, and they gave their stories naming Marie Stopes without knowing that I still worked at Marie Stopes Kenya. And that was a bigger turning point for me also, because I felt like I was part of the people that hurt them in their lives. Yes, apart from my healing, I got to understand what a lady goes through from the other ladies that I was with in the support group. And just understanding how people were hurting because of what I was doing, I could not continue.
You could not continue. And I thank you so very much for taking that final step from your healing, but also just taking that final step to walk away from this abortion giant that was Marie Stopes International. So having been there, what is your message to other women, young women like yourself, who need a job? So they have a job with Marie Stopes, but then they are in there, and from everything you've explained, it's really not a fun place to work. So they're stuck there. What is your message to them who feel they're stuck in Marie Stopes and they can't leave? Right. So knowing that it's not even only you. Of course, you were the time you were working for them, but there would have also been other people working for Marie Stopes, and even now there are lots of people who still work for Marie Stopes. Can you then, if you had a chance or an opportunity to give a message directly to people who are stuck working for Marie Stopes, who are there, but who have not found their way out as you did, what would be your message to them today?
My message for people who are stuck still working in the abortion industry, and especially Marie Stopes Kenya. Guys, you know I love you so much, and I was with you for 8 years. I understand you more than anyone, but you are hurting women. I have gone through that pain. I have seen ladies who are hurting. I have met men who are hurting, and children that have not gotten love from their parents because of what they have done. Please, please leave that place. You can still get a job somewhere else. And I know it is hard to leave, but you can do it. I did it, you can do it. I did it, you can do it.
Well, thank you so much. My hope today is that your urgent message to people stuck in the abortion industry, and also very specifically in people who are stuck working for Marie Stopes in Kenya as well as other parts of Africa, will step out of Marie Stopes, leave them and leave the entire abortion business behind, and come out towards the light, because you came out. Everybody and anybody can indeed find their way out of the industry that is taking the lives of unborn children, but also that is hurting a lot of women and a lot of families. Thank you so much, Jackie, for your courage and for your firm decision to leave the abortion industry behind and to speak up today against an organization like Marie Stopes that is in Africa doing wreaking all kinds of damage and hurt wherever they're working. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'd also want to add that Marie Stopes is a foreign organization. They are destroying Africa. They are destroying us. Please think of your country, Kenya.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
After my healing process, which took long, because apart from the pain that I felt having killed babies, my babies and other ladies, my self-esteem was very, very low. I didn't love myself. So it took some time for me to heal and forgive myself. After the counseling, I joined the organization as a volunteer because I felt I needed to do more than other people. My purpose now is to save more babies and women from abortion than those that I helped to go to Marie Stopes. My purpose now is to save more babies and women from abortion than those that I helped to go to Marie Stopes.
Thank you.
So you worked for Marie Stopes for 8 years, and can you tell me exactly what you were doing for Marie Stopes during this time? What was your duty or your job at Marie Stopes International?
We went, like for the Amua projects, we went around, especially the western side of Kenya, where we recruited the private practitioners and we took them through training and gave them equipment. So that was part of my job, and to go around with the staff.
Well, thank you so much for at least drawing the curtain for those of us who don't know what actually happens behind the closed doors of Marie Stopes, for us to know some of the things that happen there, especially from the perspective of someone who has worked for them. But one thing I would like to find out has to do with patient care. So what we see mostly in Marie Stopes reports and in different places when you read the end of year reports, the financial reports, is that they're providing all this post-abortion care, maybe women who have gone to have backstreet abortions, and perhaps they come into Marie Stopes with incompleted abortions, and then Marie Stopes is then performing these life-saving procedures that they call post-abortion care. Can you tell me a little bit if Marie Stopes indeed provided post-abortion care while you were there? And if so, what type of post-abortion care did they provide?